Good morning. Oh, y'all can do better than that. Good morning. There we go. And so glad that you are here this morning to be with us. Thank you, praise team. Thank you, Kevin, for leading us in worship in the throne. Man, so excited to be here. Again, I love to get the opportunity to get to share God's word with you and share God's message. And before we get started, I'd love to say a prayer for us. Let's pray. God, we come before you. God, thanking you for today. God, thanking you for this church family. God, that we can be here. God, that we have this building that we can come to and that we can use for your glory and for your kingdom. And God, I pray that right now that your message will be heard. God, not mine, God, and not anyone else's, but your message. God, we just ask that, Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. We love you. In your son's name we pray. Amen. If you're with us last week, Brett actually kicked us off with our Faith at Home series. And this is a series that we will be doing this week and next week. It's a 3-part series looking at what it means to really have faith at home. And Brett, about a year ago, did a lesson called The Other 6 Days, where we kind of looked at not just being a Christian in this hour, but what does it mean the other days when we're at home? And this kind of is a little bit around that. But we will be kicking off next week really our Faith at Home initiative, where this is really an area that is near and dear to our church's heart. This new Faith at Home, you guys will see this over and over and over again. This is going to be part of our DNA. This will be part of our DNA of who we are here at Homewood. And Brett did a great job of startling the funnel, really is what I say, of kind of give us an overview of God's calling for us to live more faithful for him every day. And I have the opportunity to talk to really families with children, but this isn't just about that. So I don't want you to say, hey, I don't have any kids, or all my kids are grown, or I'm not married yet. This is still for you. God's calling for us every day, I truly believe, is to fall more deeply in love with him and search him and live his will every single day. And Brett started off with this Deuteronomy 6, which is kind of our guiding passage that is for our faith at home. And we have it on the screen. Deuteronomy 6, starting verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. And we did an all series not too long ago where we talked about this, right? About loving God with all of your heart, all of your strength. So no matter where we are, you have kids, you have no kids, you're grandparents, you're a sibling, you're single, whatever it is, that is still our call today. It's for us to strive every single day to love God with all of our heart. And not just on Sunday mornings, right? I think we can kind of do that pretty well, right? We can come and we can put on our nice coat, and I can wear my nice jeans, and we can do really good at church, right? And hey, how you doing? I'm doing good, right? And we can kind of go home, and then we have Sunday night, and then we have Monday. But every day, God is striving for us to follow him and to live more in his word and more for his calling for our life. I think about when they asked Jesus, how should we pray? And he said, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I feel that our calling here on this earth, every day that we're on this earth, is to make this earth more like heaven. When we think all the way back to the garden, we think of Adam and Eve, that it was a perfect world, a perfect place, and then the fall of man happened. And if you were to go all the way back to the back of the Bible, then you look in Revelation, we know that there's going to be a new earth that's going to be perfect, a new garden that's going to be what heaven is. And we're living somewhere in between those gardens. And so sometimes it's easy for us to say, well, then what do? Then we sit back and, hey, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to be nice. I'm just going to, hey, I'll give some money here and there. I'll serve every now and then. I'll work in the nursery. But it's much more than that. Our calling is much more than just kind of going through the motions. It's every day living for God, and every day trying to make your family, your life, your world better because you're a Christian, and better because you're in it. That's what God has called us to be. Verse 7 of that, it says, then impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Next slide. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. First, it says, start with you. Are you loving the Lord with all your heart? Then 2, impressing them on your children. Since I am the student minister here, I get a chance to talk about families with children. But I don't want you to tune me out if you say, well, that's not really where I'm at right now. But I want you to know that whether you are single or whether you don't have kids yet, or whether you're in college, or you're an aunt, or you're an uncle, or you're a grandparent, right? This still applies to you. Maybe because one day you will be in that area, or 2, you still have influence on our children. You still have influence on the next generation in this church, from babysitting when we do the Freedom Fridays, or even helping out in the nursery, or teaching a class, or just being a part of this church and part of this church family. You have a special place in this. We first put this on the parents, but it's also to us as well, that we help in this journey, that we impress our faith, we impress God's love, we impress His will for us on our children. And so we're going to talk right now, we're going to get kind of practical, right? And so what does this new faith at home look like for us here at Homewood? Okay, this sounds great, Justin, but how is this going to change who we are? How is this going to change the DNA of Homewood? Well, we're going to talk about high points as our next one. Every family, every child, whether you have a 8-week-old like I do, or you have an 18-year-old, you know that there are certain high points in every kid's life, right? Just yesterday, we have my in-laws staying with us. And so there's not a lot of chance for me to hold Jack this weekend. But so we're sitting there, and Vicky is holding Jack, last night, and I walked by and I said, hey, little buddy. And then I walked by and she said, hey, he just heard your voice and turned to you, and he watched you leave the room. I'm like, that's a high point, right? So he's now his eyes are open more. He's starting to laugh more. He's starting to stay awake more, maybe more than we'd like, but he's starting to stay awake more, right? So hey, this is a new high point for Jack. Or maybe you're a parent here of a senior. There's a new high point starting this week of going to college, right? And so there's so many in between there of these milestones and these high points. What we want to look at is 6. Here at Homewood, we're going to focus on 6 high points and how we can help and encourage and equip you. And the word that keeps coming over and over again is, how are we being intentional in helping you? Now, what I want you to hear is that this is not us telling you how to do this. This is not, you are not being a great parent. You are not doing these things right. This is us saying, we're here to partner and walk alongside you any way that we can. And we want to be your resource. Our church family is much more than Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. This is a family. And our role is to help and to walk alongside, whether in any road, any speed bump, any low and high that you have in your life. We want to be there and walk alongside you, especially living out Deuteronomy 6. So we feel that we're going to be. So we're going to focus on 6 high points, and we're going to go through these very quickly. Then we're going to have some fun discussion time, but we're going to go through this very quickly. And when you look at these 6, you will notice that we've done 4 of these already. This is, again, nothing new, right? So this Faith at Home initiative is not something that I came up with. This has been going on for churches for years and years and years. But it's something that here at Homewood we feel is very important. It is the next step for us here at church. So the first high point that we look at is baby dedication, right? And so baby dedication, September 25th is our next baby dedication. In 2 weeks, August 28th, we're going to have a class for parents for this, right? We are going to encourage that when you go through baby dedication, we encourage you to go to the class first. This is going to look a little different and a little weird for us because Jack's going to be there, which we're excited about that. And it may be a little weird that Mary Beth will be in there, and I'm probably going to be teaching that class, which would be a little bit awkward and weird. But we want to be there and walk alongside you. And that's to say, hey, baby dedication is a huge part in a family's life. But we want to help you as parents to equip you to say you are now the faith provider for your child. And not to tell you how to raise your children, because that's not our job, but for us to give resources and to help, and really to say, are you living the way that you should? Are you growing that foundation in your family that your child sees that when they get older? Because they start watching, right? Even like Jack watching me walk to the room at 7, 8 weeks old, you know your children are watching you, right? So our second one, entering kindergarten. We actually did this last week. It wasn't under our Faith at Home because we kicked that off next week. And it's a cute time for us to have the new kindergartners up here, and it's just a fun time. But again, how can we be more intentional about that? We love giving Bibles out, and we love having a shepherd's prayer. But how as a church can, again, we equip and walk alongside you? So we're going to have a class next year, end of July and August. We're going to have a class for parents because we stress very highly school. Now you're going to school, and now you're going to learn. We want to do that as well with the Bible. Show the importance of the Bible in the family, right? And walk alongside saying, here's this new story Bible, but here's some more resources throughout the year, throughout the week, that you can follow up reading the Bible with your kid and to show that importance. And again, in all of this, in Deuteronomy, it starts with us, right? Do you hold the Bible as that important in your life? Does your child see you read? Does your grandchild see you read? Does your little sister and brother see you read, right? Does your siblings and your cousins, they see you hold the Bible in that high regard? Our next one going through is baptism. This is a new class that we're going to have here for parents. And next week, you guys will have a booklet out that goes through all of these and really kind of hits more focus at home in all these as well. But baptism, this easily can be the greatest high point in your life. I feel it is the greatest high point in my life, right, is being baptized. And so many parents, with the churches I've worked at, the people I've talked to, there have been multiple times where parents have said, my child has come to me and is talking about baptism. What do I do? Can you do a class about it? I say, yeah, we always talk about baptism, and it's a part of who we are. It's a part of our conversation from children's ministry to high school. But there's something about a child going to their parent and starting that discussion about baptism. And so we want to be there with you. We want to give you resources of like, hey, here are some things to talk about. Here are some steps to go. We were talking about at the end of that class on Sunday morning, you and your child, after that class, coming up to the baptistry. I know that's actually part of some of the fear, right? Is, it's up there and there's crazy dressing rooms up there. No, it's just 2 rooms for you to get dressed in, right? It's just a baptistry. It's not that deep, I promise, right? But it's not have to be this big scary thing up here. And so we want to take that for the parents. We want to take that ease off and equip you and help you, right? Not that you don't know how to do it, but again, for us to be a primary resource for you. Our next one is preparing for adolescence. We were lucky to do this class this past year with Rebecca Savage, who is a pediatrician, and she works with adolescent teens. And this was a 2-hour lunch or a 2-hour dinner we did on Sunday night with parents in the youth group. And it was incredible. And it was one that we've been saying we need to have this again and again. So we're going to do it every year, all right? Where we kind of look through the spiritual side and really kind of the physically and the mental side of what it means to go through adolescent. All right, if you've had a teen that's turning 12, 11 or 12, 9 or 14, you know what I'm talking about. Right? I'm like, wow, who is this person in my house now? Right? But we start to go through about the questions that they're asking of who am I? Do my decisions matter? We start going through these in a biblical way and in a practical way for us, again, to help parents. And our last one that we're going to do, not last one, second to last, is called Preparing to Drive. I don't know about you, but this was one of my favorite high points, right? I turned 16. The day I turned 16, I went to the DMV. I stood in line for about, 25 hours. And then I got my driver's license. And I was like, this is it. The king of the road. I'm the coolest person in the world. I remember being at home and mom saying, oh, I forgot milk. I got it. Give me the keys, right? Then you go and it's like, why did it take you 25 minutes to go get milk? It's only like 2 seconds down the road. And you're like, well, my favorite song was on and the windows were down and I just wanted to drive around for 30 minutes, right? But this is a big part of any child's life is getting their keys. It's also is a big part for a family's life to say, all right, I trust that you're going to go where you go. I'm giving you responsibility now that you're on the road. And for this class, we're going to have a class for teens and parents. Really talking about trust and responsibility that comes with getting your driver's license. It's a major high point in a family's life. And so we can be here to help grow that and help be with families. And our final one that we do is our Senior Sunday. Again, we do this every year, but this is one of my favorite times where we get to have the seniors up here, present them with the Bible, pray over them as a charge as they begin their new life as a college student. But also we have a banquet that night where they get to invite mentors and friends and family, where we get to sit up in the teen room and we get to have dinner. And the highlight of this is where parents get to write a letter to their child, and then they come up front and they get to read it to their child. Not at church, don't worry guys, at dinner. And then they get to read it to them, right? And to see that bond that happens, and to see that showing of love to one another. There's usually not a dry eye in the place as that goes on. But we love this concept, these ideas of high points. And again, how can we be intentional with this? How can we equip and encourage and walk alongside families? I think that this is going to be very, very encouraging for us. One of my mentors and one of my favorite people is my father-in-law, Johnny Markham. Johnny, you can go ahead and start coming up this way. I talk to Johnny all the time about this. There's multiple times that I talk to Johnny about this subject. While I'm on the phone, I go, man, I wish my father-in-law can say this. I wish my church can hear what he says. Well, just so happens I have a platform for this now, right? So I can make this happen, right? And so Johnny has been doing student ministry for going on 32 years, right?
That's correct, Justin.
Going on 32 years. His church has been doing Faith at Home for about 5 years. And starting in September, he is transitioning out of student ministry. And he will be doing Faith at Home full time for his church. And so I thought there'd be no greater person here that we can talk to. That's just kind of a conversation, and let you kind of share your wisdom on us.
Thanks, Justin. Did you just hear him say that I was one of his favorite people? Oh, that was worth driving down for. Yeah. First of all, if I could, let me say thank you guys. Thank you, Justin, for the invitation today. Thank you, Homewood Church, from a dad's perspective, for the way that you have accepted and enveloped and taken care of Mary Beth and Justin and baby Jack. That does a mom and a dad's heart really good. And we're so proud that you guys are who you are. And so thank you for taking care of Justin and Mary Beth and baby Jack. So many things that happen when you have a grandchild. You know, when you have a child, and then when you have a grandchild, one of the things I've just observed over the last few weeks is that, like, I cry a lot more. And for no good reason. It'll just like come as a wave, and then I'm sitting there reading a book about words like, this is a boy, and this is a girl, and this is a shirt, and this is a dog, and this is a cat. And I'll start crying as I'm reading it. Makes no sense. But thank you all for taking care and loving Justin and Mary Beth and Jack. Thank you.
So when we look at this, so one big question out there is, why Faith at Home? Why are so many churches, because we're not the first one or two churches to do this, 1,000 churches do this. Why Faith at Home? Why is this something that we should adopt?
Yeah, good question. One of the things that hit me, and Justin mentioned that I'm old, that I've been doing youth ministry for 31 plus years, and Vicki and I worked for 5 years in South Florida in Fort Myers, and then we've been in Lebanon, Tennessee since 1990. And it's been an awesome, awesome blessing and privilege for us to walk alongside families and teens in that regard. And as time went on, it began to hit me, we are losing way too many of our children. As they grow, a huge percentage of them don't stick. And that broke my heart. And I said, I'm not okay with that. That's not something that we can just be okay with. So what's the answer? What are we going to do about this? And so we began to look at at everything that we as a church did as a youth ministry and children's ministry and church-wide. And one of the things I appreciate so much about this church, observing this morning already, is that you guys are multi-generational. And that is such a blessing and so good. Everybody has a role to play, no matter your age. And I think you alluded to that several times already. But what are we going to do as a church to make sure that more and more of our children stick, and that we as families and that we as a church pass along this legacy of faith? I can't fathom the idea that one or two generations down the pike that the faith will be gone. I can't deal with that. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. And so that, Justin, was sort of the seed that sort of spurred us on to think about doing things differently.
There's that stat that George Barna has that says roughly 90% of students that raised in church, by the time they're sophomore in college, they will stop going to church, and then roughly 1/3 will never come back, right? And so when we look at that stat, I think it's easy for us to say, well, we can continue to do what we've always done, right? We can continue to church the way we've done in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and say, okay, oh well, or we can kind of be more intentional and take that shift and say, we don't want that to happen in the next few generations.
And so as we looked at that question and we saw all those statistics, it's what's the answer? And as we looked for this potential answer, we found it in Deuteronomy 6. It's nothing new. As a matter of fact, it's really old. And it's what God told Moses as they were about to enter into this new land, this new time. This is what you do to transmit, to communicate faith to the next generation. This is what you do. You love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. You impress that faith upon your children when you lie down, when you get up, when you sit at home, when you walk along the road. You know, most of us don't walk along the road anymore. Most of us are when we have children, are in the minivan years. But we talk about that faith when you're in the minivan. It's a captive audience, moms, dads, grandparents. There's only so many feet from the front seat to the back seat you can be heard. And so I don't want to talk too much here because I'll start preaching. But that's what sort of got that started.
And so looking at, for parents to say, hey, that sounds great, but we're so busy. They got school, they got sports and everything else. There's not a lot of time, right? And so there's not a lot of time with that. And so there's this number that's thrown out a lot is 1 versus 168. We talked about that for a second.
Right, there's 168 hours in a week. And I know you guys a lot of times like, where did they all go? They go so fast. Where do they all? If a very involved, active family has their child at church, like 2 or 3 hours a week, Sundays, maybe Wednesdays, maybe Sunday nights. Well, let's say 3. There's 165 hours of the week that they're somewhere else. We can't assume that 3 hours of the 168, 165 of those hours, other hours someplace else, that 3 hours is enough to do enough for the faith development of a child. 3 hours isn't enough. It has to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It has to be every day. You can't just do it the 3 hours at church. And so it has to be really intentional. You mentioned that word earlier. It has to be intentional. You have to decide, on Mondays, we're going to do it. On Thursdays, we're going to do it as we go, as we're on the road, as we lie down, as we get up, as we sit at home. Our faith has to be so real in our lives that we naturally talk about it. We talk about it. You talk about the things that you love. You talk about the things that really matter. Kickoff is in a couple weeks. That matters. We talk about football. We talk about baseball. Jack's got his St. Louis Cardinals bib on. Probably the only child in here with a Cardinals bib. We talk about those things that are important to us. And if our faith is really important to us, we're not just going to leave it to somebody else to talk about. We're going to talk about it. intentionally at home. You know, our culture is so into outsourcing everything. We outsource everything we do. We outsource our lawns. We outsource the washing of our windows. We outsource our laundry. We outsource pretty much everything. We're going to get somebody to do everything for us, the things that we don't want to do. And I get that on some level. I don't want to do my plumbing. My wife doesn't want me to do my plumbing. And so some of that's okay and understandable, but there are some things that cannot and should not be outsourced. And one of those is the faith development of our own children. The church certainly comes along and partners with us as parents. But as moms and as dads and as grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins, you know, we talk about that faith every day in the normal situations and don't just leave it to somebody else. We talk about it every day.
Well, what if, and so I think about, you know, as me as a parent, and I think about other parents, if they sit back and say, well, that sounds great, right? But we're paid professionals, right? Or we're supposed to be professional. We're paid professionals, right? So we pay you, and you went to school for this, and you need to teach. Brett actually talked about this last week about the influences in a child's life, where I think I'm like number 8 on the list. I'm way down there, right? It's mother, father, it's grandparent, it's other sibling, and then it's like another family member, and then like camp counselor, then preacher, than me, right? So I'm way down on the list, right? But we had this idea of, well, you're in charge, or you're not in charge, you are a professional, I'm going to send you off, and maybe I'm not equipped enough to do this, you know? And so what do you say to parents that say, that's great, but I don't think I'm ready for this?
You are the youth minister, okay? And so the church has a role. Don't misunderstand. The church has a role. Church and home together, 2 powerful influences. But mom and dad are the most important influence, the most powerful influence. Peter Benson is a research expert. His organization is the Search Institute out of Minnesota. And he said moms and dads are at least 3 times more influential than any church program. So mom and dads, you are still the greatest influence. Not to say that Justin's not. Justin is. Youth ministers are, children's ministers are, elders and deacons and Sunday school teachers and preachers. To come to the church family and have all these extra other spiritual family members to encourage and to support and to be an influence and to be an example. You know, when you combine the 2 powerful influences of home and church together, a child's faith is far more likely to stick. We both have our jobs as home and as church. They're both really important. But families at home can't just like totally outsource that to the professionals.
I love what you said the other day whenever we were talking about this. And you said, we're not asking parents for y'all to be Max Lucado, right? You know, we're not really asking you to be the best preacher out there. We're asking you to be mom and dad, right? And we're asking you to be involved. And it doesn't take Sunday morning up in the pulpit, but it takes Monday morning in the carpool line, right? And way to have that.
And just the way you talk about normal everyday things, like mom and dad when you're out with your child, and you look up into the sky, and it's a beautiful day. You know, you can talk about the sun and you can talk about the clouds, but you can talk about it in a way that sort of communicates faith. You know, God is good, and God did an amazing job creating this world. That sort of contextualizes life. When you mention God and you're not cussing, it's like God created this, and it's good. I was reading this week, a young granddaughter asked her granddad about why
Don't
it
start
is.
crying.
I know I will.
Don't start crying.
I will. About why it is the way it is. And it was a tough question. Why is the why stage? That's coming. You know, why? And when they ask why questions, you know, we as parents, you know, have to be prepared to give an answer that reflects faith. Doesn't mean that you have to be Max Lucado. Doesn't mean you have to be Billy Graham or Brett Walters or any great theologian or youth minister. It means your faith is real and it's growing and it's asking. We can't transmit. We can't communicate something we don't have. We can't pour out into somebody else something that we don't have in our picture. So first, that's what we have to make sure that our faith is real, our faith is legit. Maybe that's part of why the numbers have been what they have been, is because we haven't been communicating it, because we haven't been growing it in ourselves.
What do you think, I'm going to wrap up here in just a little bit, what do you think really is the heart of the issue with this? What's the heart of the problem? Why have we had to turn to this?
Oh, wow.
And we have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that was just it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's our faith. Maybe we have to intentionally inspect our hearts and say, before I go any farther in this, where am I as a granddad? Where am I as a dad, as a mom, as a grandma, as an elder, as a Sunday school teacher, as a priest? Where is my faith today? Do I really believe? What is most important in my life? Does my life reflect my words that say that God is a priority? And if it is, then the way that I communicate with people, with my children, with my grandchildren, with those within my sphere of influence, my language is going to tell what's really important to me.
As we close up here, I'd love for you to just tell kind of a personal story. How has this really hit home to you, not just in the past 5 years of Faith at Home, but, really in your life, or as your life of being a parent? Again, please don't cry.
Yeah, something funny happens when you have grandkids. And by the way, this passage even talks about that. When it talks about generations. Teach this to your children and to your children's children. Maybe we need to think more about the generations instead of just this close. Think maybe farther down the road, down the path. But I remember February of 1988. Vicki and I were living in Fort Myers, Florida, and working and serving the church there. And Mary Beth was born in Fort Myers. And here's the thing. We were young. We were in our early 20s. And you know what? They actually let us take Mary Beth home from the hospital with us. And that feeling was like, do y'all know what you're doing? You shouldn't just let us take this baby home. We don't know what we're doing. And Vicki was an awesome mom, and she's the awesome grandma. But it was scary. I'll never forget walking into our townhouse, and I'd had the great idea to have one of the teens in our youth group video the whole thing for posterity. And so James came to the hospital room and was there when we dressed Mary Beth and walked her down the hall and down the elevator, out into the car, and into the cars. Those archaic car seats. Boy, car seat technology has really changed over the last 30 years. Anyway, into the car seat, down the road. And by the way, when you drive on the way home with that first newborn,
very scary.
You're really interested in what everybody else is doing at that point. Yeah, and so moseyed home and got home. James chronicled the whole thing. We got it on video if y'all want to watch it sometime. We get home, James is still, the camera's still rolling, and we walk in the door, cross the threshold into the promised land. We crossed the threshold, and we had some steps that went up to our upstairs in the townhouse there. And I remember Vicki and I just sat there on the steps and holding baby Mary Beth. And Vicki looked up at James and goes, "That's good now." in other words, thank you, you're dismissed. And so James took the hint and turned the video camera off and left. And we sat there on the steps like, what do we do now? What do we do now? We've got this baby. We don't know what to do. Fortunately, she wasn't crying or screaming a lot. Mary Beth was a great baby. What do we do now? What do we do now? God blessed us not only with an awesome child who grew up to marry an awesome young man and have an awesome baby. But he blessed us with the opportunity with Mary Beth, and then later with John, and then with Katie, who's here too, holding Jack, to say, this is what we are going to do. Our priority in life is to make and nurture a disciple of Jesus. And I loved it when Brett said that a while ago. That's your theme of your church. You know, to make and grow disciples, to grow and to connect and to serve and love. And so we made the decision, right, that this is who we are. This is what we do. And with Mary Beth, that was what we always try. Not perfect. They would be the first to tell you that we made lots and lots of mistakes. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is our priority. This is our goal, is to raise this child in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord, and to impress upon her these things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then later on, Jesus quoted that very passage. And he said, love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, love others. I'll stop now because I'll start preaching. But yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Donnie. As we kind of wrap up, I think about where does it lead us? For church and for us, this is part of who we are now. We are dedicated to walking alongside parents and everyone in this church as well. That we are here to minister to you, to equip you, and to be with you in every stage. And for some of you this morning, you may be sitting on the step saying, what do I do? Whether it's with your child or just about yourself. What am I doing in my life? Am I really living out the first part of that Deuteronomy 6? Am I loving God with everything, with all my heart, all my soul, all my strength? And so here at Homewood, we want to walk alongside you in that path. So if you're here this morning and you're saying, my next step is, hey, I just need someone to kind of walk with me. And I need some prayers about this because I'm not doing this yet in my own life. Remember, you're a parent. You say, hey, I need some help in this. And next week, we're going to give a charge to parents in the church. Or maybe right now, you're like, hey, I just need some help in this situation. And I just need some prayers. We have shepherds here that love you. We have minister here that love you. We have people in your family here at church that love you. Or maybe your next step is, hey, I would love to get baptized. We want to assist you in that as well. We want to walk alongside you in that journey. So if there's anything that we can pray for you about, we will have a shepherd here. In that back room right there, we'll have a shepherd and their wife there if you kind of want a different setting. But we would love to pray for you, to help you out in any way that we can. But if you will you please stand as we sing.
I am a sheep and the